Kneff Lake Campground is located in Michigan's Lower Peninsula to the east of Grayling on Kneff Lake. Kneff Lake is actually considered a private lake, but it's joint owned between the state and the federal governments. This lake is actually stocked on a regular basis with rainbow trout, so it's probably a really good trout fishing lake. I didn't actually go down and do any fishing, but later I will visit the water. Kneff Lake has 27 different campsites on 2 main loops through the campground. I'm going to walk through and we'll take a look at most of the campsites. There was only one person staying here this time that I visited. In the past, there have been more. I have a feeling that the campground probably fills up pretty quick being just outside of Grayling. However, it doesn't really offer great access from the campground to the water unless you go down to the small recreation area where the beach is at. The campsites themselves are plenty nice enough. There is absolutely nothing wrong with them. They're solid back-end sites, plenty big enough for large rigs or plenty flat enough for tents and small campers. From the main loop of the campground where the campsites are at, there is a small little hiking path that cuts through one of the campsites, and it leads you down to the edge of the water. And when I say a small hiking trail, you can see it's actually a little bit lengthy with quite a few steps that go down. And once you get down here to the bottom of all of those steps, it's really a little underwhelming. There's a very small sandy beach. You could pull some kayaks up here if you can get the kayaks down here from the campground. You're better off to definitely launch kayaks and canoes from the recreation area. And a very little bit of sand out there in the water for swimming. If you're just looking to kick back and relax along the water for the evening and carry maybe a small bag chair down there, that's probably your best option. Continuing around the campground, you can still see the sites are nice. You got some pretty decent picnic tables, small fire rings. There is lantern hooks at each one of the campsites. You have a paved path that goes through the campground, but then you have gravel and stone pads for camping on. We're coming up to our first outhouse. Each loop only has one outhouse, so we'll take a quick peek inside here. They're definitely a little bit weathered, and there's caterpillars. I believe there's silk moth caterpillars hanging all over the place. Keep that in mind when you're throwing up your tent or pulling out your awning. You definitely don't want to smash one of those things inside when you're taking your rig down. Here's another one of those steps that go down to the water. It's a lot of steps. We've already seen what it goes down to. I'm not going to go back down there until I get to the recreation area. Some of these sites are reservable as there is a campground host at the very beginning of the campsite drive. It's quite a ways away from the actual campsites, so if there's an issue, you've got a good walk or drive to get to them. Most of the sites are fairly secluded here. There are a couple, like these two here, that are right back to back. Probably better if you're coming up with a couple different families or in a group camping situation. One thing that I'm really surprised about with this campground is it has water from spigots instead of hand pump. We're elevated so high up here, it's such a far path down to get to the water. I didn't expect to have water that came from spigots. The bugs at this campground have never been an issue when I've been here. I've been here a few different times. Never had any biting flies or mosquitoes or anything like that, and I'm gonna guess it's because it's so far up above the lake. You can see here a couple of these campsites are actually paved, so that if you have larger, heavier rigs, then you can back in without having to worry about sinking down or having an issue leveling off your camper. Each one of the loops does have spigot water, so you don't have to walk far ever to get to water. This is now the second loop to the campground. I believe it's actually the first one that you come to, but it's easy to drive past. It looks like it's just a maintenance road or something like that at first until you get going down it and come up to the first campsite. There's a few flies flying around, but like I said, they weren't being a bother, and they've never been a bother when I've been at this campground. Clearly, we don't have many issues with bears or even raccoons for that matter. Otherwise, we would have animal-proof trash cans, and we just have normal garbage cans at each one of the outhouses. I could see the occasional porcupine. I can definitely tell you there's chipmunks that run around in here. Otherwise, I didn't see much sign of any wildlife. They position some of these campsites so that the pads actually pull off on an angle, and that's really nice. It makes it way easier to back larger rigs into. Some of the stuff that people are pulling up here is just massive, and if your campsite is on an angle, you can almost just pull ahead and then back right back into it way easier than having to make a sharp turn. There's the campground host at the very end of the road, or the beginning if you're just pulling in. Like I said, it's quite a ways away. Once you get coming to this campground, you might even think that you made the wrong turn because the road back here is so long. This is the recreation area, plenty of parking. It does cost $5 if you don't have a recreation pass. It's a day use area. They have some decent outhouses here as well as more garbage cans. I've only ever been to this part of the campground one other time. I actually made a different YouTube video and it got deleted because there were kids swimming in the video. So I'll be a little more cautious with that this time. It is handicap accessible. You do have stairs or you have a ramp that you can go down. Makes it nice for all people to use this. Again though, it's quite a few steps down here. They didn't make it close to the water by any means, probably for erosion. And again, this lake, I believe it was only 20 acres in size, but it is a designated stocked trout lake, and it gets stocked with rainbow trout every single year. So definitely bring a rod and reel and give it a try if you enjoy fishing. The beach here is actually a really nice beach. It doesn't ever seem to get used very much when I've been here, just a couple people at a time. However, there was some money put into this. You've got some nice buoys out there in case there's a speedboat, I guess. It's a designated swim area for safety, but then look at this seawall that was built up there to help keep the sand and the erosion from happening. This seems like a really nice, quiet campground. Definitely a great place to bring a family just outside of Grayling.